Hello and welcome to episode 19 of A Place of Safety. Today I'm with Melanie Lee. Hello?
Hi, Vincenzo.
Yeah, perfect.
Hi.
I think this is I've really been looking forward to this episode because it's a bit different from other episodes. Because in other episodes we've talked a lot about ideas, beliefs, theories underpinning the system, and but all of these things that we talked about have real life consequences. And I think today is an opportunity to kind of talk about how people have been affected by the failings of this system, I think. And I think, Melanie, your family has gone through, I would say, a tragedy regarding your son.
Yes.
And you're kind of campaigning for a public inquiry, I think, to take place,
Yes.
to ascertain what exactly happened. So, would you mind taking us through the story, how it played out to start?
Well, we call it a story, but I think it's just a living hell, to be fair.
Mm.
My son at 19 started to have a few problems with his mental health, suffering depression and not being able to sleep. So we got him to the GP. I didn't know prior to that he'd been put on a sleeping medication anyway. But it seems he was deemed suffering psychosis. So he was taken to a psychiatric ward for assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And for a young man that's, this is happening all over the place to people, but he had never had any experience with psychiatric wards, neither had I. So you're scared. We walk in, staff are just sat in the office, no one sort of welcomes you. There's patients sat in the corner, drugged up. There was nothing to do. And I think within the first 2 days, there was a situation on the ward where he actually rescued a young girl that had been found hanging. He was consequently put onto antipsychotics, and he was eventually discharged after about 5 months. And at that time, the medication, there'd been an error in his medication, and the medication had gone from, he says, "Mum, do you know, they've upped my medication 25%. And I'm like, don't be silly, that wasn't discussed at review. But someone had made a slip and error. It had gone from 25 milligrams to 37.5 milligrams. They basically sent my son out of there overdosed. He had what I now know is called tachycardia, where he was getting facial twitches, pains in his back. He was dribbling. His head was down. He was shuffling his feet. It was like an old person there they sent home.
So basically, to understand the story so far, he goes to the doctor. Which I think, from what you describe, like it wasn't a full-blown psychosis that, like, the way it was presenting to you and the family. It was just kind of, that he was there for depression, and then kind of the doctors thought it was a psychotic crisis. Is that?
That's right. And during that 5 months that hospital stay, the last week of his stay, he said to me that he'd been drugged and raped, and he'd been raped. Sorry.
Yeah.
And we took him to the police station, but he said, get the police to check me out. If they find any signs of rape, Mum, I'll tell them my name. But if you just tell them my name now and tell them where I'm staying, they won't listen. And he was right. Anyway, they didn't do anything. So I took him to the walk-in A&E, and yes, that he was examined, and they found anal tears. And it was my fault. I told him to just say nothing. They wouldn't listen because he was getting let out within a week. So that's how we left it.
So basically, he goes to the GP. He's told he has psychosis. He needs to go to the ward. He goes. But by the way, was it against his will to go to the ward, or was he voluntary?
He was sectioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he goes there in a place where he doesn't want to be. He's in a vulnerable position and he needs to save someone from
Yeah.
hanging.
Yeah.
Then he says he's raped. I think it was dismissed by staff, I
Yeah.
imagine. And then you go and do checks, and it looks like there's a basis to what he's saying.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the year earlier. So then obviously then he's discharged. He's over medicated. So we have this visit to the GP who says, yeah, sure enough, he's been overdosed on this. We need to get it out of his system.
Mm-hmm.
So now we go through all of the Christmas with withdrawal. And of course, the CPNs are coming around saying, well, he needs to go back on meds. But by that time, Matthew is absolutely petrified of this medication because of the way it's made him feel.
Mm-hmm.
We're scared. So we agree with him. No, we're not going back on it.
Yeah.
At that stage, they says this is early January, February. Well, he'll have another breakdown. Okay, well, we'll cross that bridge. Well, yes, he did start showing signs of needing help again. And then it was, there's no beds. Can you get him to have his crisis daytime because we can't access the records after 5 o'clock? Or it was just so 5 mental health assessments, and each time they wouldn't
Admit him.
Yeah. So finally in November there was a breaking point, and this is when he was admitted for the second time, November the 7th, 2012. Whilst in there, day 3, I was told not to go see him for a week, let him settle down onto the ward and get his bearings, meet people. And I respect.
And what's the rationale for that? I mean, so somebody's in crisis, they say, well, we don't want loved ones to be next to him so he can settle down. What does that mean?
Well, because I was happy for him to be admitted, so he was quite angry with me.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't, he didn't want to be there, but I was saying, no, you got to go. So it was just like, give him that time to settle. I'll go see him in the week and he'll have calmed down. However, day 3, he called home to his dad and he says, I'm being drugged and raped on the ward, absolutely distraught. So I called the ward. They told me our class, and I couldn't speak to him, but to come in at the end of the week, day 7.
Okay. Sorry, was this the same ward where he said he was raped before?
Yes.
Okay.
So the police, we told him to call the police, which he did. But we didn't know anything about that. So on the day that he died, on the 12th of November, I get this call to say, and this is like an hour before I'm due to go to the hospital. The doctor phones. He says, your son's been found hanging. Oh, I just collapsed on the floor. He said, it doesn't look good. So of course we get in the car and make our way there, and on the route it was just, you get that, you just know.
Yeah.
I said to my dad, he was driving us, I said, Dad, slow down. I said, he's already dead. And he had been dead over an hour when they made that call. And that's when the lies then started that was the first lie, and then they've just gone on from there. So we arrived at the hospital. We were taken into a room, and literally I knew that was an interrogation then to find out what information we knew so they could then start the falsification of their paperwork. And all I wanted to do was go and see my son, but they wouldn't let me. And then eventually I was walked 10 minutes down the road to A&E, where he was cold on a trolley. And then as a mother, you want to just grab hold of him and give him a cuddle and kiss and cry.
Yeah.
And it was the voice come, you're not allowed to touch, it's a crime scene. And an orderly was left in the corner, and the police officer gave me very strict instructions. You touch him, I will arrest you. It was absolutely horrendous. And then I just said, can I have a cutting of his hair? No, he's a crime scene. So
obviously this is shocking on so many levels. But did he, so they knew they suspected from the beginning, the police, that there was a crime? committed?
Well, what would you say that? Now, my son was a crime scene, and yet since it's come to light, they didn't treat the room he was found in as a crime scene. They didn't take any interviews from staff or any statements. It was then left to an internal investigation by the trust, which has taken me 4.5 years to prove totally. It's not even worth the paper it's written on, and the Parliamentary Health Ombudsman agreed with me on that count. So anyway, it turns out that day 3 where he cried rape, he called the police. The police arrived. By the time they got there, they said Matthew was slurred in speech, so the staff had given him more medication. They said that he had no mental capacity to be able to make the decision to be examined, although he said that he wanted to be examined. There was an advocate there initially, and his statement said, yeah, he wanted to be examined. The police did nothing. They didn't even take the clothing or seize the bedding in the room. And my argument is that if he had no mental capacity, why didn't you phone me as his guardian, his parent, and ask my permission? And I have no answer on that. And when it comes to it, although he was on that ward that week, he had no care plan, he had no key worker, they hadn't done a mental capacity assessment. Staff had said, oh, he cried rape last year, he's hallucinating it was all in his mind. And the police just believed that, and off they toddled.
Isn't it shocking, though? I mean, the power that staff members have on, like, that if you get raped, like in this case, police would ask staff if that's true.
Yes.
And clearly, if staff did the rape, they can get away with anything. And also, you see, the problem is that on the ward, you're allowed to restrain people, basically. And you can find a way to justify why you did it. And it's very difficult then when abuse goes on for a proper assessment of what went on to to happen.
And I've been at this 7 years now. I've had numerous patients come forward that were on that ward and on different wards of different trusts, and that they get restrained, held down, 4, 5, 6 burly men, women as well, bruises on their bodies they send to me, grabbed around the neck, face down on the bed, trousers pulled down their ankles when they're going to get an injection. There is no human rights being, in these places. And, 7 rapes, I think, we've uncovered within the trust, and they've all been put to bed. And,
was it all by the same person? Do they know, like, how?
Honestly, no, different people, and it tends to be kept very, very quiet, and the staff, if they're suspected of any sort of sexual abuse, they're sidestepped either into another ward to work somewhere else. And what's come to light is if someone they're a qualified nurse, they get struck off, they can still go back and work with vulnerable people as a healthcare assistant. It's absolutely shocking. And yes, I don't think these places have been a predator's playground for years, and I think it's still going on.
Yeah, because of course, if you have that, if you want to be abusive, being in a place where you need to restrain people on an ongoing basis is kind of appealing, I would say, as a to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of. I think, everything you're saying, and I mean, so this place was supposed to help him in their mind.
Yes, it was. These are places of safety that people go for therapeutic care. I, as a mother, the first place he went to was a 2-hour drive away, and I've heard of people like having to drive 10 hours, like miles and miles. But I was 2 hours, and I thought, well, I'm not going to go for 2 hours and just see him for an hour. So I would stay